This is the Transforming Anxiety Podcast with Kelly Hanlon McCormick, and today is episode number 181, MVP, The Inner Voices. Welcome to Transforming Anxiety. I'm your host, Kelly McCormick. I'm a mom to 2 boys, a wife, friend, daughter, and sister, and I'm a certified life coach, yoga teacher, and soon-to-be mindfulness meditation teacher. I'm no stranger to anxiety, and I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and your emotions so that you too can transform anxiety into calm, peace, and whatever you want for your life. I'm so glad you're here. Hey there. Welcome in today. It's time for another MVP. But first, I want to tell you what's happening this month, August of 2022. This has been a month. Some of you know that for me, one of the biggest anxiety triggers in my life is having too much going on. Like just having a schedule that's too crammed full, having too much going and doing, and being out nights, being with a lot of people, and not enough downtime scheduled into my days and my weeks. And well, August, I'm not going to lie, August has been a big month for me. I will for sure be a different person on September 1st than I was on August 1st. And that's a good thing. It's a great thing. Different in ways that I chose and planned and really want for myself, for sure. And it's been a lot. This month I have 3 trips, family vacation to Colorado with my extended family and my brother and his son who has leukemia but is in remission. We had a little bit of a celebration with that. I went up to Iowa to visit some girlfriends, go to the state fair to see Alanis again. You know my love for Alanis. And I'm going to Florida. And my kids are starting school. I'm doing a really intense business mastermind, kicking off the next chapter, the next program of my 3rd baby, my business. I have seen friends. I have traveled with family. We've done road trips. I'm going to be flying. There's a lot of people. There's some travel alone. I'm going to Florida on my own. We've had 5 birthday celebrations. I did my first 14er in Colorado, which was an experience, a totally wonderfully transformative experience and quite the undertaking. I am going to be meeting new colleagues, and I'm going to be meeting some people that I've known for years, but I've only known online. And I mean for years, like for a decade, which is kind of fun. And I tend to have the mind and the ambition of an Energizer bunny and the nervous system of a very delicate little flower. I guess not really. I have a human body. I have a human nervous system, right? We all have limits. We all need going and we all need resting. We all need both, and we need the balance and the flexibility and the resilience of knowing what both looks like for us as individuals. And folks, I did not do that this month. Now, I will admit I went into this month knowing it was going to be too much. All my people were fully well aware that I was really biting off more than I could chew. I looked at my calendar and travel, and I knew full well that this was all going to be straight up amazing and like not a good time at all. And here we are. So I'm going to tell you here and now that in September, I'm going to lay low. I'm going to be creating a lot of new content here for you guys. We're going to be doing new podcasts again. We're going to be launching a new meditation course. I'm going to be telling you more about that in a couple weeks. But really the next few weeks are going to be full of rest. I'm going to be doing long walks and hikes, some slower yoga, time with my kids, and just really nourishing my body, my mind, my heart the whole month. I like to look at the arcs, like the arc of a week, the arc of a month, even the arc of a year, kind of depending on what the topic is. and be sure that things are flowing on the whole. Sometimes there's a hiccup or a busy stretch or just a tough spot that we go through. But when the overall arc balances out, things can feel okay. So stay tuned. I'll share more of that as we get into September, into fall, into my month of rest, which was following my month of going. All good stuff. Now, okay, let's get to this next MVP. We're going to return to the inner voices today. This is a really good one. This was a popular one. And I think this one was kind of a slow burn. People didn't know what it was going to be about based on the title. So if you've listened to it, great. Like I've said, it usually lands totally differently. We usually hear things differently the more we hear them. So be willing to take another listen. If you haven't heard it, maybe it wasn't the best title. I don't know. Stick with this one. This is a good one. It was a popular one in the end. So let's just do it. You ready? Here we go. Hey there. Welcome in. Wherever you are, whatever you're up to today, how are you? Summer break, folks. Summer. My kids are out of school tomorrow. How about you? If you have kiddos, are you about done? And either way, kids or no, how are things going for you now that May is wrapping up? I know there's a lot still going on out there. Here in the United States, the pandemic news continues to get better and better, but worldwide, things are not going so great. So if you have the heart space, if you have the head space to tune in with India specifically and learn about what's happening over there with the pandemic, if you can spare some money or some kind of resources to send their way, please do. There's a lot going on in the Middle East right now at the time that I'm recording this. So again, if you have the space in your own mind, in your own heart, tune in and offer up. I have found one of the best ways to get out of my own spin is to show up for others, to help where I can, to offer what I can, to be generous however I can. Don't think of this as another to-do. Please don't hear it that way. If it isn't within your means or your capacity right now to do that, don't. But just know that there are always those who can use our support and our donations and our volunteer efforts. And I have found often that when I'm willing to show up for others, my own stuff has a way of dissipating. I don't feel so alone. I don't feel so isolated. There's just a real cathartic magic to help and to connection. So, that said, let's do something fun today. I have a kind of fun topic to explore with you. We're going to talk about those inner voices today. And I've broken the inner dialogue, all those thoughts and comments and opinions and judgments, all that nonsense that goes on in our minds. I've broken this into 3 different quote unquote voices. And I've been playing with this for a few weeks. It seems to come down to these 3 over and over again. And they're the critic, the counsel, and the culture. Now, first of all, what am I talking about? What are the inner voices? We all have this experience when we're waiting in line, maybe at the grocery store, and thoughts are flinging around our minds about how slow it's going, where you need to be, what the person ahead of you is buying, how the kid behind you is behaving, what the cashier is wearing, all of those thoughts. We also have the universal experience of moving about our day and either cheering ourselves on or, perhaps more commonly, beating ourselves up for how we look, for what we just said, for how we're doing at work or with the kids or around the house, what we should have done, how we should be showing up, all the things. And I got to thinking, wow, it's quite the cacophony up there. It is quite loud in my mind a lot of times. You too? You get fed a lot of ideas, a lot of comments and stories from your inner narrator, right? It's like we all have our own personal MC walking us through the day, all day, every day. And I have found that by breaking that inner voice into these three characters, into the critic, the counsel, and the culture, it's easier to see what my mind is up to. And perhaps from there, I can find an antidote, like an alternative narrative, or heck, just the simple awareness of who or what is talking at me so that I can set that story down and move on without it. So let's start with the critic. This may be the most vocal for you, the most talkative of all of the inner voices, the critic. So the critic has a, not surprisingly, disparaging way of talking to you. We all have our sore spots, our weaknesses, our tender elements, and the critic exploits those and puts them on display in our minds. So it may be about how you look. It may be about how you do your job. It may be how you are with the kids, your partner, how you're feeling, how you do or don't do the things you say you're going to do. The voice of the critic can show up anywhere and everywhere. And it shows up mostly in those places where you feel vulnerable, like even with yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's one thing to be vulnerable with other human beings, and that's a conversation for a whole other day, but consider your vulnerability with you, like showing up for yourself, showing up with yourself, seeing yourself, knowing yourself. It's a lot, right? And the damn critic. The critic is there to beat that vulnerability right down. It's there to tell you why it won't work, to remind you of a past experience that didn't go well, to dredge up any pitfalls or weaknesses and just poke at them so that you feel utterly beaten down. Now we have to be aware of the critic, but also let's bring some awareness to what the critic is. The critic is a bundle of thoughts. It's a certain flavor of thinking that comes out of your mind. The critic is real in the sense that your mind is actually thinking those thoughts. Those sentences are going through your mind. You can really think thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or I should look better. The thoughts are real in that way, sure, but they're not true, meaning the voice of the critic, not true. It's real, it's happening, and it's not true. You see? So the critic, one of the most familiar inner voices for most of us, that inner chatter about how we're not doing it right, or we don't get it, or we should look a different way, all the critical things. Real, sure, but not true. More on what we do with these inner voices is coming, so hang tight with that. Let's take a look at the council. The council is like the board members of you, the ones in your head who think they know everything. So did you see the Pixar movie Inside Out? It's a obviously animated film. I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. It takes place in the mind of an elementary school aged girl named Riley. And there's like this dashboard for all of her behaviors and actions. And the dashboard is driven by 5 anthropomorphic color-coded emotions. So they're joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust. And I think of the council, it's kind of like these characters. It's like you have this inner presidential-like authority. It's like you have the secretary, a treasurer, like all of these council members who like to pipe up and just give never-ending commentary on whatever is happening around you. And they comment through their own lens, right? So we all have different council members. Our council members are largely based on our past. They're based on our personal wants and desires, and they can be based on our tendencies. So, like, let's say you grew up with a caregiver who really believed in hard work, that you needed to show up and bust your butt in order to move ahead in life. Head down, keep going. Work ethic was the most important thing. So you may wind up with a council member in your mind who has a really strong work ethic, that inner voice that's just always pushing and driving and striving. And of course, you can appreciate how that could serve you to have an inner council member that's really driven like this, but it could also work against you in certain ways too, right? That council member has its own strengths and its own weaknesses. So let's say that you really value time with your family. This is another council member. It's really important to you that you spend time with your loved ones and you plan vacations to see extended family and you look forward to holidays and crowded dining room tables packed with the people you're related to. And in that case, you may wind up with a council member who is constantly scanning your life for family, for connection, for get-togethers. And again, there's pros and cons, right? Maybe this council member is creating opportunities to travel and get together with your loved ones. And maybe this council member is really tied up in family drama or disagreements and struggles and really has a hard time disengaging from other people's business in the family. Now, of course, this is all hypothetical. It could show up differently, and I'm sure it does show up differently for you. But you start to see where these council members pop up, like how they come to be. Now, we also wind up with council members born out of our own tendencies. So most of us here, hanging out together for this podcast, have a tendency towards anxiety. We may be, just a little high strung, a little stressy, tend towards overwhelm a little bit. And that tendency also generates its own council member. So I sometimes picture this little anxious monster hanging out in the boardroom of my mind. It's just waiting to dominate the conversation. It's just waiting to remind all of the other council members, all of the other inner voices in my mind, what's what, why we need to freak out, what's going to stress us out today. So these are just obviously a handful of examples. This looks different for all of us, but you see, we wind up with this whole internal boardroom full of various characters, and they have different motivations, and they have different backgrounds and desires and weaknesses and strengths, and the lens they view the world through is very different as well. But they're maybe constantly debating each other as to what's best, as to what's right, as to what makes the most sense for you. All of these warring ideas and opinions. It can get very crowded in there when we don't move old board members along and allow them to retire or maybe just pass away altogether. So take a moment and check in and see who is on your council, who is always showing up to put in their 2 cents and argue for their way to be heard. Do you have wildly polarizing council members? Maybe something that you grew up with and something that you believed, a belief system you took on later in life. Do you have any council members who have extreme views or who are really set in their ways and have strong opinions about stuff? It's just good to know, especially as we work to excavate our thoughts and our belief systems and we check in with our mental patterns and tendencies. It's great to see, who do I have sitting on my council? Who do I have advising me all day, every day? Is it this little anxious monster? Is it this little, hard work is the only way council member that one of my parents or caregivers handed me when I was a little kid? You can see how it's important to go through these council members and just be sure they are serving you, that they're not working against you, just at least from time to time. Do a little clearing out of the council. Now, just like the critic, who is so prevalent and universal that they can't simply be a board member, the critic had to have its own category. But just like the critic, the council is real and that it's happening. They're all just up there chattering away. But your council has no idea what the truth is. Your council members are telling you stories based on where they've been, based on what they want, based on what they tend to think and feel and do. It's nowhere near the truth. But just like the other inner voices, they talk about their ideas and their opinions, and they talk about them long enough, and we kind of start believing them. You know, just like when you hear a new song often enough, something like catchy and poppy, and you hear it often enough, you kind of start to like it. It becomes familiar. You get comfortable with it. And it's like, oh yeah, this song isn't so bad, right? Same with the counsel, same with the critic. We start falling for it. And just a reminder, we don't have to buy what they're selling. All right, more on that in a minute. Let's talk first, though, or last, I guess, about the culture. This is the last of the inner voices. The culture. I think of the voice of the culture as the very water we are all swimming in. It's so sly because you almost can't see it. We're so in it. So all the messages you get from the media, from social media, from ads, from movies, shows, songs, all the messages you get when you go shopping and you see what's on offer. Here's what's popular. Here's what's available. Here's what we have for you. When you read the headlines, right? All the struggles and attachments that we have as a society, this is all part of the voice of culture. We are positively flooded with memos about how we are supposed to be, how we are supposed to look, how we are supposed to act and talk, what we're supposed to do and like and wear, what's in and acceptable and applauded, what's out and othered and frowned upon. It's like, here's what the Joneses are doing on this side of the tracks, and here's what it looks like on the other side of the tracks, right? It's absolutely everywhere. So this is easily the sneakiest of the voices because we are so immersed in it. The people around us are also immersed in it. And unless or until we bump up against something that doesn't exactly jive, like with our gut intuition, we can just blindly go along with culture, not even realizing the extent to which we've adopted the voice of society and brought it home to our own minds. It's pretty wild. There are some aspects of that inner cultural voice that we're all pretty hip to at this point. We can see the beliefs around beauty. We can see beliefs around racism, around misogyny, around ageism. We can see that stuff. It's sometimes hard to know exactly how to hold ourselves and what to do in the face of that, but we get it, or at least we're starting to get it, right? We're getting it. And hey, there are nuances to all of that that really run deep. Things we don't know that we don't know. Things we can't see because we simply cannot get enough perspective to put it into focus. There's success. There's what good parenting looks like. There's weight, bank accounts, family traditions, religion, politics, education. There are so very many aspects to the cultural voice. And it's even more wild because it's not a voice that originates with us. It doesn't originate with any one person. And yet, we're all bound to it. We're all bound to it individually and collectively. So, you see why I saved the culture voice for last? The critic and the counsel are individual. They're unique to each one of us. They're very specific to what each one of us deals with, our past, our experiences, our wants, all of that good stuff. The culture, though, that's the water we all swim in. It's collective. It's the inner voice of all of us. So, the critic, the counsel, the culture. What do we do with this? Maybe you can see this really clearly. Your inner critic, your inner counsel, and the inner voice of culture at work. Maybe this is kind of a new idea to you, but you are on board and you can see the possibilities and you just want to hang out with this concept a little longer to see exactly how it's showing up for you. But all of this does beg the question, now what? right? Where do we go with this? What do we do with this? The first step, per usual, is awareness. See these inner voices for what they are. They're real, but they're not telling you the truth. They talk all day, every day, but they're just talking. They don't know. You don't have to fall for their stories and opinions and judgments. So get aware. See them for what they are. From there, check in with what these inner voices are telling you and get quiet. Get still. Open up internally to that very core messenger inside of you and ask, do I want to keep this? How does it feel to believe this? How does this affect my life, believing this story? I don't have to keep it. I don't have to fall for it. So how does it play out? And is it working? This is one of the most important practices of our lives. Seeing a story come across the ticker tape of our minds and simply noticing it. Just letting it be there. We don't have to scramble to change it or to fix it or even to let it go. We can just notice it. Let it be. So when we practice noticing, we're deliberately practicing not hooking into it. Noticing isn't falling for it. Noticing is seeing it. Oh, hi. You again. There you are, telling that story again, huh? There's no drama, no fuss, simply noticing. So the critic, the counsel, and the culture, your inner voices, they may be loud, but they're just talking. It's not you, and it's not true. Yeah? So get aware, practice noticing. When you show up and actively notice, you're crowding out the action of believing it, the action of buying into it, the action of falling for it. You don't have to do that. Totally optional. So get aware, practice noticing. And it's a practice. This is not an overnight magic trick. Keep showing up, stay committed, stay compassionate with yourself, and get aware and practice noticing. All right, so that's it for today. The inner voices. Next week, we're going to talk about some specific emotions. We're going to talk about fear, overwhelm, worry, self-doubt, and our super favorite, anxiety. So the title for next week is Thanks But No Thanks. We're going to look at the upside of these emotions, what they're telling us, the language that these emotions speak, and what they have to offer us. And we're going to practice listening to the message and saying no thank you to the drama. It'll be good. So I will see you same time, same place next week for that one. And until then, pretty please leave me a rating and review and take care. Do you have someone to help you with your stress, anxiety, worry, and overwhelm? If not, I would love to be your coach. The Fierce Calm Project is my virtual coaching program where we get to go in on topics like this one, and I can help you apply these lessons to your life so that you're creating your own transformation. We do live coaching calls, guided meditations, on-demand yoga classes. We hold book club where we read books your neighborhood book club won't, and there's lots of bonus content that I've created just for you. When you're ready to take what you're learning on the podcast to a whole other level, then come on over and check out the Fierce Calm Project at kellyhanlonmccormick.com/Fierce Calm Project.